Welcome to another episode of the Share Your Story series. This is a podcast experience where we get to explore humanity one heart at a time. I am your host, Jenny Diltz, and a grief coach who specializes in life and loss. I am the founder of Grieving Coach, and I help people convert grief into power. If you feel inclined to make a donation to keep events like these going, you can follow the link in the show notes. Today, I am honored to be joined by my friend and colleague, Jenna Bonner. In our coaching support group one time, I introduced myself saying, I love grief. And I knew we would be friends when Jenna's face lit up when I said that. Jenna is the founder of Grief Forward. She is a listening ear to anyone feeling stuck in their grief and needing to move forward. She helps people discover their new normal after loss and live the life they were meant to. She has experienced a lot of loss and grief in her own life, and she has developed compassion and empathy to hear people out and bring some normalcy to opening up about their grief, loss, and pain. Jenna, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm so looking forward to sharing the excitement and passion we have for grief and grief work.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So, like I said, when we first met, it was in a coaching group for alumni of our training program, Coaching at End of Life. And as I said, I introduced myself saying, I love grief. And I remember that big smile on your face when I said that. Not many people share my excitement for grief.
Yeah. And then I told you that I was excited about it too.
Yeah, I remember.
I private messaged you and I was like, I get you. I was like, I understand.
I remember that. And I was like, yay! Yay, it's one of my people.
I don't know if anybody else in the group felt that way, but we did.
Yeah.
I'd never heard anybody say I love grief. And I was like, well, I do too. I was like, yeah. I liked that.
Yeah, I had a similar introduction when I started with Dawn's program.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the feeling that people were looking at me kind of strange, but Don totally got it. He's like, yes. And then he shared his collection of funeral flags.
Yeah. That's probably why I get along with him too and love him so much as well. Because I was like, instantly, I was like, oh, I love this man.
Yeah.
We're all kind of weirdos, I guess.
Grief aliens.
Yeah, right.
So what excites you about grief work?
Well, a lot of things excite me about grief work, which I know it sounds strange to most, but it excites me to help others along this journey. And a lot of people aren't willing to walk this journey with others, during grief. So just the fact that, I really do enjoy, and it excites me to help others through their grief journey. And then, just allowing people to be heard and giving space and expression for their grief. And then, just when, I do grief coaching. And so when clients, they learn about themselves and they progress, and in turn, when they want to help people in grief as well, I have heard that out of people's mouths before. And it's like, wow, that's what we want, not everybody's called for that, but when people want to help others in grief because of what they've experienced in grief, it's like, yay, that's exciting to me. And I love, doing groups and having people meet and find community in grief as well and know that they're not alone. That's exciting because people can feel very isolated. And so it's exciting when people do find others and feel that sense of community and that they're not alone. So, yeah.
So much of that resonates with me.
Yeah, that's good.
So how did you become a grief coach?
Well, kind of started out with many losses, and I'll talk about that later in more detail, but I've experienced a lot of loss, and then really just a lot of prayer and asking God what he wanted me to do, because I knew at one point that God wanted to use me in the work of grief. Didn't know what exactly it was, didn't know exactly what it looked like or what, if, I had no idea, but I just knew that I'd experienced so many losses, and I knew that God was doing something in me to help others. And so really just praying and asking him, what do you want of me? And then I really heard from him loud and clear. It was in 2013. I'd been praying about it, but I sat down one day and just started journaling. And I started journaling things I'd never even thought of myself. Like, just stuff was coming out. Like, I think I filled up like 5 pages or something like that. And it was just ideas, of like how to help people in grief, like different, like creative ways, or like, just different things. And I was just like, at the end, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, where did this come from? And I was like, I've never,
awesome.
like, this was not in my brain. Like, this was God, like writing this down and letting me know, like, this is what I want you to do. And I was just like, whoa. So I still have that journal, and I still keep that close because that really keeps me going and like working towards my goals. But yeah, just really, that moment was pivotal, and I wasn't even sure still like what exactly that looked like. So I thought maybe counseling was the route to go. So I started, looking into that a little bit. And then I was also being coached at the same time. I had a life coach that I was using, and she's here local where I live here in Savannah, Georgia. And so we were kind of talking through that, of what my future is going to look like and in this. And she was like, well, what about coaching? And I was like, okay. So I started really thinking and praying about that. And it just seemed like the route that I should be taking. And counseling might be something that I decide to do later. It's a possibility, but coaching is where I've started. And she really helped me kind of like unpack that and really like realize, okay, this is a great start. And she knew Don. And Don, first, those of you watching, Don is our instructor, the guy who created our program at Coaching End of Life. So she knew him, and I think they knew each other because they were coaches. I think like she doesn't do grief work necessarily, but I don't remember exactly how they knew each other. But she knew of him, and so she told me about him. And he and I'd been volunteering at hospice too. So she knew that he had the connection with hospice. So she was like, I think you'd really like him, and, you should talk to him and see, what you think about his program. And so the first conversation I had with him on the phone, I was just like, oh, I love him. Like, and I was like, I just felt really connected to him right away. And yeah, we had some things in common. And I was like, wow. I was like, yeah. And I'd looked into some other courses, but none of them seemed quite like his. And I was like, he's a Christian, and I know that like they don't necessarily teach that, like the teaching is not really Christian oriented, but still, like I knew it was founded on Christian principles, and because he is one. And I knew that, like, I don't know, just the different things with hospice and just the love of grief. I was just like, yeah, I was like, this is where I need to be. So, so I signed up for his class and never looked back. But yeah, that's kind of the progression of how I became a coach. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I had that connection in that very first conversation with him too.
Yeah.
And similarly, I knew, okay, this is the program I want to be in. This is the program for me.
The other ones that I was looking into, they just didn't seem, they were a little bit more on like life coaching. It wasn't even like directed towards grief. And I knew that I wanted to be doing grief. So it was like, it was a no-brainer. Why wouldn't I do this program,
Yeah. So you mentioned that you've experienced a lot of loss and grief in your own life. Tell us more about those experiences.
how much time do you have? Because it could go on all day.
We have
I'm just kidding.
as much or as little time as you want to take on it.
Right. Well, I would say that, yes, I have experienced a lot of loss, and I won't go into detail of everything, but I've had a lot of like chunks of time where I'm experiencing a lot of loss, within a couple years, and then I'll have a break for a while, and then it'll be another like year of just like lots of loss. And I feel like that's maybe not the same for everybody, but I have heard other people say that they lose people, kind of in pods or whatever, and that it seems kind of overwhelming. And yeah, I've definitely had moments where it does seem very overwhelming, but I would say the first kind of like hard years and hard losses were like 2005, 2006. I was in college and I lost both my grandmas and a friend, and the friend was in a car accident, all within 11 months of each other. So that was like my first, I'd experienced loss before, but that was like the first, like really like, ooh, like this is a lot, like within such a short period of time. And yeah, I was close with my grandmas, and so the, I won't go into all the detail of everything, but and then my friend, it was really hard. A car accident is something you cannot prepare for.
Yeah.
And it's something that you're just like, oh, okay. I'll share a little bit about like my story with her. But her name's Stacy, and we went to church together, and we were really good friends. I went away to college, and she still lived at home, and we hadn't really talked in a while. And I really, now looking back at it, I know that like, and I knew it at the time, I think too, but God was really prompting me to talk to her before she died. And I had a dream about her a couple weeks before she died. And I acted upon that. I called her a couple times and we never got in touch. But I tried, and I didn't know, why, but I mean, I just, I hadn't talked to her in a while, and I missed her and had this dream. So, and then when I got the call saying that she had died, I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, so there was some guilt that I wasn't able to reach her. And it was just a shock. So, and that's probably, the first loss that I've had of someone like close to my age. I'd experienced, loss of older people, and, that's a little different when somebody your age dies. And so yeah, I went home for a funeral, and I'm really glad I did, but it was hard. So there's that chunk of time, and at that time I had no idea that God wanted me in grief work. Like not even a clue. But I've also, I've experienced loss with other people, like not even like direct losses to me. One of my close friends, she lost her baby, and I've never felt more grief and pain for another person than that situation. When that happened, I knew like God was doing something in me then, because I was like, all I could think about was her and her husband and just their family and just the pain. And like, I didn't want to do anything. Like, and I'm a really fun person. I like to, like have fun and be fun. And during that time, ooh, it was so hard. Like I just couldn't even find any joy, because I just felt so deeply for her. And it makes me cry every time I talk about it, but so I'm like go into it. But yeah, so that was a really hard situation, but I knew God was doing something in me then. I was like, I feel very deeply and very strongly for her, and it's not even my loss. And I really like, I pursued her too in this. I wasn't like standoffish, and I wasn't like, oh, I can't, like bother her right now, or I don't want to talk to her. But I really pursued her and was keeping in touch with her of like, how are you doing? You know, like we got together and I was like, if you want to talk, you know, talk. If you don't, that's fine. And so, I mean, that I guess I didn't know that I had that in me. And it was kind of strange to me. I was like, I'm really like going towards this instead of away like most people do.
Right.
So, yeah, so there's that one. And then kind of a pivotal moment for me was in 2013. I lost two friends, one to cancer. She'd had cancer for a few years, and she really was progressing, and then she wasn't anymore. But she was, you know, in her early 30s. And then another friend who had died in a car accident. That was like a few months after my friend with cancer had died. And so just that being such a close time period, you know, 3 months apart, and the one lived in Ohio where I'm from. I didn't go back for the funeral. I felt guilty, you know, I felt terrible that I didn't. And then the one lived here in Savannah, and I did go to her funeral, and you know, it was just different situations, but you know, just those being so close together, I was like, God, what are you doing? Because I feel like something's going on.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, there's something you want to do in me. So that was kind of the time when I really started praying about what is it in this grief world do you want me to be in, and what do you want me to do? So I mean, I hate to say that like those two friends like were pivotal in that way, but I mean they really were. And I've even told both their parents that. And yeah, it doesn't make it any easier that they're gone, but it, you know, it makes it you know, kind of, I don't know what the word is that I want exactly, but it just makes it
manageable.
Yeah, and beautiful that there's something good coming out of it, you know. And so then so that was 2013. So then 2017 was when I finally started my grief coaching courses. And that was a really weird time too. I'd signed up, I was going to start in May, like the beginning of May. And, you know, everything was going fine, you know, everything seemed to be going well. And then I got another call. This was like the week before I started my courses that a friend, well, he was actually an ex-boyfriend of mine, had died suddenly. And it was very tragic. It was very, very sudden. And I hadn't really talked to him in a while. I mean, he lived in the same town as me, but we hadn't really talked or kept in touch. And, you know, an ex-boyfriend, you know, I was married, so you don't have that kind of relationship anymore. But that really hit me hard. That was, I mean, I hate to say it, but that was probably like one of the hardest losses, because it was like there wasn't really a resolve with our relationship. I didn't really get to say, you know, some things that I maybe wanted to say. And it was like, oh my gosh, like, and just, you know, the tragic and the suddenness of it all, it just all compounded. So there for probably like 4 months or so, like all I could think about was that. And it was really, you know, I wanted to know every detail. You know, we've talked about, you know, the different kinds of like grieving and loss. And I felt like I was really like compartmentalizing and like really wanted to know like everything about like, you know, like what happened, like what, you know, like, and just break it all apart. And it was hard too. I mean, I think my husband was like, why are you like grieving this hard over an ex-boyfriend? Like, this is weird. And it was weird, but I had to just go through a lot of things. Like I had to go through, I read some old journals just to like, you know, kind of keep his memory alive. And, you know, I still honor him today. Like he's been gone for 4 years, I guess. Almost 5. Yeah. And, So yeah, but it was the weirdest loss, and just the nature of it, and
Yeah.
who it was. And we had a lot of mutual friends, so I did a lot of talking with friends at that time. I mean, I was on the phone like every day for like probably a week or two. And but it felt good to talk that stuff out, and like share memories together, and just just to kind of keep his memory alive. And his mom didn't live around here. She lived in a different country, and I got to know her through this.
Oh, wow.
And I think that was really good for both of us. And I got to know one of his other friends. So yeah, I mean, I really felt like God was doing some things through that, but it was such a weird time because I was about to start my grief coaching training. I'm like,
Yeah.
and in grief coaching, like they want you to be open and they want you to be vulnerable, and like they're asking you questions about yourself. I really didn't even want to talk about it then. I mean, I was with other people, but like with them, I was like, I don't know you guys. So I really didn't open up
Yeah.
about that. I maybe did when we would do individual coaching some, but I just didn't put it out there because I knew I'd just be a ball bag and I'd just be bawling and crazy. Um, so yeah, so even with his loss, I knew that, and just the timing of it, I was like, I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I know that I'm experiencing a different kind of loss to be able to help others, eventually. So, so I took it and I embraced it. And, but I did feel pretty depressed with that loss.
Yeah.
And his loss kind of started like a series of losses after that. So that was 2017, and then 2018 was really hard. My grandpa found out he had cancer, and so he dealt with that for almost a year, and then passed away from that. And he was my last grandparent left. And during that time, this was like the worst week of my life probably. So before he died, like that week, my dad had found out he had cancer as well. And so my dad finds out, and then like 4 days later, my grandpa dies. And so it was a lot. I mean, it was a lot for my mom because it was her dad and, her husband. And, it was just a lot for all of us. So, and we found out my dad had stage 4 cancer. So it was a lot of information. So yeah, so, and my dad, he's still alive. So I would call that a living loss. But we didn't know at the time, what that was going to look like. It seemed like a bleak diagnosis, and it seemed like, at his age and just everything, that it might not go in the way that we want it to. But yeah, and he's dealt with a lot since then. And he doesn't have cancer, but he's still dealing with, a lot of the after effects of it. And it's been hard to see him age and to see him like not be the active person that I've always known. And so I mean that's been a really hard loss, even though he's still here.
Yeah.
So and that's something I deal with like every day now. So yeah. But yeah, so those are really the main losses that I've dealt with. And but I mean, I really do feel like it's made me better, and it's made me, be able to learn and understand people's grief even more. So yeah.
How have you been buoyed up? Because that is a lot of loss.
Say that again.
How have you been buoyed up or lifted up through all of those times of loss?
Well, when it's really good for me to journal. I always can get my thoughts and feelings out when I journal. And, sometimes I choose to do it and sometimes I don't. But when I do, I really feel like it's kind of a release of, okay, I've got those feelings out, I can kind of, move forward. And I have been coached. I haven't really been counseled very much, but I think that might be something I could benefit from. But yeah, I mean, my husband's been a really good support. He's been he hasn't been there with all of these, but he's been here with a lot of them. And just my family, and I have friends that I feel like I can talk to. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like kind of going, grieving each person.
Yeah.
Not like grieving, just the whole, like everything as a whole. Grieving like each person and allowing that to happen has been the best to help me. So, when they're all kind of like in a row, it's like, ooh, like I gotta dissect this a bit.
Yeah.
And like I said, I mean, with my dad, like it's still a living loss that I think I do need to handle a little bit differently and better, honestly. And I have thought about, I'm like, maybe I do need to go to counseling. Maybe I need to, talk that out. So that's something I'm kind of going through now.
Yeah.
That I think I need to be a little more proactive and not let this slip me into a weird funk or depression. So yeah.
So you mentioned coaching and counseling. What's the difference between the two?
So how I usually describe them is counseling is you're kind of looking back at your life and looking at maybe some things that hasn't been addressed, or kind of looking, in the past, and then wanting to, I mean, I think both really, you're kind of wanting to move forward, but with counseling, you're looking in the past and kind of wanting to like unearth some things and, see what can, come of, I'm not thinking of words right now. Give me a second. And like, what can, like, what can you move forward from? And how can you, like, I think it's a lot about talking and getting things out. And then with coaching, I mean, I think coaching's similar, but you're kind of talking more about like the present and like where you want to be in the future, and helping you move forward in that. It's not as much looking in the past. I mean, yes, we do some, but it's more about right now, where do I want to be and how do I get there? But with grief coaching, it is different, because I think with regular like life coaching, you do have a lot of goals that are set. Grief coaching, there's not always goals that you think of, or that you can reach within a certain amount of time.
It's not like I want to get over my grief.
Right. And it's harder for people dealing with grief to come up with, if you ask them, what they want to get out of the session, or what, what kind of goals, like sometimes there aren't any. And I tell people, I'm like, that's okay. Like your goal could just be that you want to be heard right now, and that you want me to listen. And I mean that's a goal, and that's okay. And I feel like that's oftentimes what it is with grief coaching. So it's not something that's pushed of like, oh, you have to like do this, this, and this. And then, oh, voila, your grief will be done. It's not.
Doesn't happen that way.
No.
So I keep reading your sign behind you. Beautiful moments come out of the uncomfortable.
Yeah, that actually came out of a coaching session of mine. That's
awesome.
I said that when I was being coached. So
that's so cool. So what beautiful moments have come out of your losses, your uncomfortable times?
Well, I think knowing what God's purpose is for me. Now, I don't think that would have unearthed, and I don't think that would have, been revealed to me if I haven't dealt with loss. And so that, because before all of this, like I've always kind of been searching, like what what is my purpose here on earth? Like what am I here for? And I've always I was in the line of work of creativity, and like I went to school for graphic design and I did photography. And so even though I love those things, I didn't feel a ton of purpose in them. I was trying to put purpose on them, but it just didn't awaken me like grief does. And then once I knew that that's what I was here for, I was like, whoa, okay. It's just really different than where I had been before, but I knew what my purpose was and I could, move with that. But I think I might be getting away from your question. What was your question again?
What beautiful moments have come?
Yeah, just, like I'd said, with some of those losses, like with the ex-boyfriend, like meeting, some of his family and being introduced to different people and just learning things from each other. That's been really beautiful. And, just being able to talk to people, like some of my friends that I've lost, I've been able to talk to their parents, and really let them know like how important their child was to me and how, important of a friend they were. And I think that's been, a blessing for both of us.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been good for me to kind of like reflect on all of these losses. I mean, I don't do it all the time, but it's just been good to reflect and see like where I was and like where I've come, and that I haven't let it get me in this like depressy, like down state.
Yeah.
And that, I am moving forward, and that, I'm learning from all of this, every day. So that's been good.
That's awesome. Grief work can be really heavy sometimes. What do you do to remain balanced with the heaviness and the lighter side of life?
Well, I mean, like I've said, I journal. I mean, that's something that I use. I also, I like to do fun things to kind of, keep my mind off of it somewhat. But just, I love to salsa dance. So I feel like that's kind of like a release when I dance, it's fun, and it's a way to like to keep the heavy burden, down. But I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing to feel burdened and grieved, but yeah, it is heavy to deal with your own grief, but it's heavy to deal with others' grief as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like, sometimes it's easier than other times to deal with others' grief. There are sometimes I do feel like I get really in it and it's hard to separate. But I think the more people I've coached and the more experience I've had with this, it is easier to separate and be there to help those people, but not get so involved that it's so heavy to me.
Right.
I mean, it's it's something that I'm still learning of how to do that, but I think when I journal and I get those thoughts out, that really is helpful to me. And even just talking, like, I mean, I don't share anything that clients have talked about, but I'll just briefly like tell my husband like, hey, like this was good today. And just being able to like verbalize a bit, that kind of helps keep the the heaviness down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I know that when I was, as we've been collaborating in workshops and stuff, I know at one point you said that you were really good at celebrating.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I guess that's another way too. Yeah, I can always celebrate anything. I mean, and I even like to celebrate I think you're familiar with it, or we've talked about it, the Day of the Dead, which is November 1st.
Uh-huh.
And that is, honoring your loved ones who've passed on. And it's, if any of you've seen the movie Coco, they talk about that a lot. And I knew about the Day of the Dead before Coco, but then just to see it a little bit more like in, animated real life,
Uh-huh.
I don't know, it just kind of made me want to do that, and to make an ofrenda and put the pictures up, on that day, and light candles. And a lot of times they eat the same foods that their loved ones loved, and I'm all about like food and any way I can honor people. So
That's awesome.
I'm like, yes, let's do this. So me and one of my best friends, we decided to make an ofrenda last year, each one of us at our houses, to honor our loved ones. And I don't know, it just really like, I don't know, it made me feel, it just made me feel like I was really like honoring them, and it just made me feel good. And it makes me feel like, I'm helping their memories live on. And
Mm-hmm.
and so I kept that up for like quite a few days, and was able to really like for some people, when they think of that, they're like, oh, that would make me so sad. And it really doesn't. I mean, it just makes me feel like I'm really honoring them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to continue doing that every year and
That's
celebrating
awesome.
their lives. And yeah, so I do love to celebrate. So I can even celebrate people in death, which is strange, I know, but
Well, I think to me, it's not strange at all.
yeah.
To others, it may be strange, and that's okay because each person has their own way of handling grief and dealing with death and life and
Mhm.
loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what would be the best piece of advice you could give to somebody who's grieving?
Well, it really depends on the situation, I think. Um, and I mean, not just client oriented, but or what the client needs, or if I'm not coaching somebody and I'm with somebody talking about grief, it just depends on what they say, kind of
Mm-hmm.
what kind of advice I give. But I mean, and there's a lot of like cliche things out there, that people say. But and maybe one of these kind of sounds a little cliche, I don't know, but but I guess, one thing I would say is just, when you feel like you're sinking, don't be afraid to like throw your life raft out and like ask for help, and be able, to seek help and talk. And if you really feel like you are sinking, I think, a lot of people isolate themselves in grief.
Mm-hmm.
Um, another thing I would say too is just to be careful not to isolate yourself for too long. Telling your story and telling like your loved one's story and honoring them, it keeps their memory alive, and it keeps you from not sinking into a deep depression that, um, that, could really be detrimental. Um, just really like opening up. And I mean, that doesn't mean you have to talk, 'cause some people don't like to talk. Some people don't want to share, but, just not isolating yourself. Um, when people find community is when they, I think that makes a switch for some people, that they're like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, I'm not alone in this. And there are other people dealing with this. So, yeah, I would really encourage people not to isolate. That's really important.
Yeah. You talked about sinking. Um, and as through Don's training, I've learned the benefit of being in the grief and allowing the grief to come. So
Mhm.
how do you find that balance between not sinking and experiencing the grief?
Yeah. Well, I guess I would like consider sinking, meaning, um, where I mean, kind of like drowning, like you feel like you're drowning and you feel like you can't get out of it, and you feel like
Okay.
it's never going to end. And
Okay.
yes, be in your grief, yes, experience all the things that you need to experience with it. But, when you feel like you're so far past being able to get yourself out of it, I think that's when people need to reach out.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Amazing. I've loved this conversation.
Me too.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
Not necessarily that I can think of. I don't know. Well, I guess I'll just say this. Like we talked about me being a grief coach, and I am a grief coach, but I also want to do so much more than just be a grief coach. I want to have a business that is all encompassing of grief and, helping people in a multitude of ways, whether that's in creative ways like art therapy or counseling or, whatever that may be.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my goal, and that's what I'm working towards. So, yeah, everybody can stay tuned and might want to hire you or might want to work with you.
That's exciting.
But yeah, it's been a long time coming, that's for sure. But that is my goal, and the more I talk about it, the more excited I get. And yeah, so it's not just grief coaching for me, but it's just helping people in grief in any way possible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your adventures and treasures with us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. And I'm so glad that we've met and become friends. And
Yes, definitely. Every time I talk with grief workers, I get so excited and I learn, like, yes, I'm a grief worker, I'm a grief coach. I've been through the training, I have my own business,
right.
And I work with people in grief.
Right.
And I still learn so much.
Yeah.
From other people.
Yep.
From like you and my other guests and
Mm-hmm.
colleagues, other grief workers, other coaches, and my clients.
I don't think there's enough that we could learn. I mean, really, like it's kind of never ending.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good.
Awesome. Where can people find you?
So you can find me on Facebook. I have my Grief Forward page. So it's, Grief Forward. And my regular Facebook is Jenna Bonner. It's Linder and then Bonner. Jenna's with 2 N's, Jenna. And then you can also email me. My email is griefforwardinspirations. That's inspirations with an S at the end @gmail.com. And yeah, I'm working on, website and all of those things too. But for right now, Facebook and email.
Awesome. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
I think that's everything. I appreciate all the good questions today.
Cool. So if you enjoyed this, join us next time in our journey of exploring humanity one heart at a time. You can also choose to donate to the program so we can continue to have conversations like these in the future. And I'll put that link in the comments and in the show notes. More of my work can be found on my website, grievingcoach.com, and Facebook, jenny.renterdilts. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Jenny Dilts-Grieving Coach. Thank you so much, Jenna, for joining us. It's been so fun.
Yay, thank you. Cool.